to this Facebook Live. I hope you are well. Yes, it's week 3 in this series called Managing Challenging Life Situations. And I'm going to be sharing with you a number of strategies over these episodes on how you could get through these difficult times and, come out on the other side stronger, better, empowered, uplifted on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so thank you so much for joining in. Oops, as I dropped something there. But thank you so much for joining in. If you've probably been following this video for this series for the last few weeks, you probably see me talk about a number of things around our well-being, so our mental health, our emotional health, as well as developing resilience, especially with the climate that we all currently are facing at the moment. And so these forums are just to share some concepts with you to keep you in that state of wellness constantly, as well as keep you uplifted in your day-to-day activities. Okay, so today, the first time I talked about how to survive, thrive, and maximize challenging situations. And in the second one, we talked about taking the pressure off, because I was coming across a number of us who, despite, the lockdown and all the things going on, we're kind of like finding ourselves, stressed to the eyeballs for some unknown reason, for one reason or the other, there are lots of reasons. And so therefore, it's really about supporting you in terms of moving forward. And today's one, it came out of 2 things, really. After having conversations with a number of people about what was going on in their worlds, as well as just some things that I kind of like been pondering on myself, I wanted to just focus on some things around the whole notion of dealing with some junk, okay, some internal junk that we kind of keep here and we keep here. So it's about looking at some kind of junk. Now, you all know me, and by the way, hello everyone who's just joined in. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, so you'll always know that me being a proponent of dealing with emotional baggage, so we don't live lives crammed full of emotional baggage. That's kind of like one of the things that I'm passionate about. And as you probably know, book upside down, it's not going to work. Okay, Overcoming Emotional Baggage really is the second book that kind of started myself as well as other people on that journey. And the whole idea is really to support people become more aware of some of our attitudes, belief systems, and our behaviors, and how that sometimes doesn't line up with who I believe we were created to be. Okay, so using that as a premise, now, one of the things I've noticed that we've all a lot of us, I won't say all, I won't generalize, a number of us have been doing in this kind of lockdown, and quite rightly so, we've been decluttering, we've been hearing people talk about, doing their gardens, fixing their sheds. Some people, I actually spoke to a friend and she's painted the whole house, basically. People are doing so many things out there. And I think it's fantastic that, we are all getting active in all the different things that we're doing. And, I think that's actually brilliant. And I, for one, I've started my planting season. In fact, it started a while back. I planted quite a few things on Sunday, some tomatoes, corn, carrots, onions, that kind of thing. So, so I do get it about, taking care of our external environments, our homes, our gardens, and all that kind of stuff. However, there's one thing that we need to keep in mind when we are decluttering all the different aspects of our lives. We sometimes leave what I call our minds and our hearts out of the equation. Okay, so sometimes we get, we kind of like accumulate, that's the word I'm looking for. We accumulate a lot of junk along the way as a result of our life experiences. Now, if you've read any of my previous books, like Quit Hiding, Start Living, I think I've got that here, you'd know that I'm always talking about, the effects, that's that there, the effects that life has on us, as a result of some of our challenges. So, for example, if you've been through a hurtful relationship, you may find yourself harboring unforgiveness, bitterness, hatred, and a whole raft of other things that, sometimes we find ourselves accumulating. If you've been through maybe a challenging situation and maybe you faced disappointment, perhaps you're resentful, you don't trust again, and a whole raft of other things that, people kind of pick up along our journey, me included. I'm not excluding myself from that equation. And the challenge is that when we don't deal with some of these issues, they end up cluttering our lives. And one of the things that I've seen the most that has an impact on us is the fact that, they kind of trip us up along the way. So our emotional baggage, it trips us up. We find ourselves making decisions and that are not quite right for us, or unwise choices we kind of make. And so I find that these things kind of have a huge influence in our lives, more than we give it credit for. And so therefore, I just wanted to share a few things today about helping us deal, or more importantly, I was going to say deal, but identify some of the things that might be lurking in the background of your mind, or worst case scenario, your heart. That's basically where all the stuff happens, your heart. And so really it's about taking an inward look. So as I said, it's all great that, we kind of like jewelry, glam, makeup and all that kind of stuff. We kind of like glamorize ourselves up. But what's going on the inside of you? That's the key thing here. And so, as I said, it's really about looking internally and looking at the junk that we sometimes accumulate and making sure that we're constantly getting rid of that or dealing with it. Well, more importantly, let's take the first step based on the model I shared with you last week, which is around discovery. So becoming self-aware. Acceptance. So you can't just say, well, I was created a bitter person, or this is who I am. But I've heard people say that's not going to wash. Okay. So, and then once you've accepted it, then you're going to be taking action. So if it's unforgiveness, you're going to, I always say to people, try and find the first step on the ladder to unforgiveness, or should I say forgiveness, trying to release somebody from your heart. And then the last thing is really monitoring that. So that's like really my 4-step model. It's about discovery, so self-awareness, acceptance, taking action, and then monitoring that whole process. Now, why is this lockdown a great time to do that? Well, a lot of us, not necessarily all, but, for those of us who had to stay at home, we've got, we've kind of like been taken out of that hustle and bustle of life. So, there's no, for some of us, there's no long commute. There's, you're at home, you're able to kind of catch up with yourself. So, perhaps you were on a treadmill before, we all know what it's like. We wake up in the morning and, we get onto this, treadmill of life, and we just kind of like, we're just kind of like, going for gold kind of thing. But the key thing to remember is this, that, we have a phenomenal opportunity at the moment, just to kind of catch up with ourselves and see what's actually going on. And this is a strategy that I personally adopt every so often. Sometimes I either go on a retreat or I take some time out away from work and just kind of catch up and see, well, what's going on? Because if you don't do that, as I said, regardless of whether you are aware of it or not, the chances are that you may have accumulated some junk that might be having an impact on you. So let me give you an example, and I always use this example when I'm sharing. Sometimes in my working day, and I'm sure that some people can probably relate to this, in my working day, sometimes I get so busy, my head's just like work and just, so many deadlines and to-dos, and that sometimes I lose sight of what's going on, to the point whereby I might even get a paper cut, a little paper cut, and I don't realize it's bleeding. Sorry, I don't realize I get that paper cut until it starts to bleed, and I'm like, oh, where did that come from? And so, as I said, I was just so engrossed with work and all the other things that I'm doing. All of a sudden, I see this bleeding finger. Now, if you try and imagine what's going on in some of our lives, so busy, with maybe children, family, elderly parents we're caring for, responsibilities, coming out of our ear rolls, to-do lists upon to-do lists kind of thing. The chances are that you're just being kind of like going at it, trying to get through, and quite rightfully, getting through all the things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis. But could it be that you also have a emotional paper cut lurking about somewhere? Now, you might think, no, I'm okay, I'm good, thanks very much, and blah, blah, blah. And it could be that you are fine. But here's my little test. I call it the heart test. Now, the heart don't lie. I don't care what anybody says. Your heart does not lie. And that's why, even in the Bible, it talks about, guarding your heart, basically with all diligence, because, everything blossoms from your heart. Your ideas, your creativity, your life, your spirit, everything just kind of comes out from there. So if it's cluttered with stuff, Houston, we have a problem. Okay, so, when we talk about the heart test. Now, this is what I mean, and I go in the great details in the book, both in Quit Hiding, Start Living and Overcoming Emotional Baggage. So what do I mean by the heart test? Simply put, now, as I said, your heart doesn't betray you, but sometimes we kind of profess with our mouth, like, for example, I'm okay, I've gotten over it, that doesn't bother me anymore, or, I'm fine, we all say that. But in reality, let's use a really good example here. Perhaps somebody stepped on your toe. It could be literally, or it could just be stepped in your life and just caused chaos, okay? Somebody has just done something where you're like, I can't believe they just did that. And you're just like, ugh. You're trying to keep it together. You're keeping your cool and doing all the necessary things, and you're just carrying on and carrying on and carrying on. However, here's what I talk about the heart test. When you see that person again, what goes through your mind? Now, it could be one or two things, really. You can either see them and think, oh, bless them, just let them go, or even, just happy, just say hello and mean it and just carry on your journey. But if they've done something that's caused a wound to your heart, there is a high chance that when you see them, you either want to do a beeline, don't want to touch them, don't want to hug them, don't want to say hello, whatever, don't want to have anything to do with them. Or you might even verbalize that by having an attitude with them and blah, blah, blah. Or you might find yourself, and this is a really good indicator here, you might find those emotions that you felt when they committed that offense. You might find those emotions coming right back up. So all of a sudden, you're landed right back into that situation when the original situation happened. So you might find yourself, you're getting really angry. Maybe your blood pressure rises, your heartbeat rises, and you're like, ugh. And it's like, remember I said the heart don't lie. The heart will tell you if there's any issues. The heart will always let you know that there is a problem. And so I'm trying to say, during this time where we've got the lockdown and where we've got time, and I know, and I say that, because I do realize that, there's still responsibilities that people have to do. But I want to encourage you just to spend some time, looking at what perhaps might be going on the inside of you. What's going on there? What's going on in your heart? What's going on in your mind? What are some of the things that just keep going around? Now, let me use the example of unforgiveness again. I don't know about you, but I'll hold my hands up and say, hey ho, been there, done it, wrote the book, got the t-shirt. Hopefully I've graduated, but it does rear its ugly head every so often, but hey ho. So what are we talking about here? So basically, the challenge that I'm finding when I haven't released somebody from my heart is I'm finding myself, it's almost like an auto, when you watch a video and it's on the loop kind of thing. It's basically like that. In your mind, you're going over that hurt story. I'm going to call it a hurt story. You're going to go around your mind, the hurt story, time and time again. Your boss did that, your ex-partner did this, or your current partner did this. And it's just going round and round and round and round. Then you know that there's some junk to declutter. That's just an example. When you can't sleep because you just keep thinking about what somebody did to you, there's an issue. Something needs to be decluttered there. And so I'm going to use another example. And I'm sure maybe perhaps some of the ladies in the house can relate to this, but have you ever had a chance, a period of time when you've got this fantastic wardrobe, bags in one place, shoes in one place, accessories in another place, and all sorts of, the clothes, dresses, skirts, everything's just all puck up. It's on point, okay? And then over time, it kind of like, hats find themselves in accessories and shoes find themselves in bags and, you wore an outfit, you haven't put it back again, so you just kind of chucked it somewhere, okay? Yeah, we won't go there, okay. Now, we all know what it's like, the chaos, what it's like when you're trying to find something and you can't find it because you've got all this clutter just all over the place, and it's like, oh, where's that skirt? Why not I put this shirt in this place? Okay, can you imagine now if you translate that chaos? That's what's really going on here sometimes. So sometimes you're wondering why you're not, progressing maybe with certain areas of your life. Maybe you're choosing the wrong relationships. Perhaps just stuff is just not happening for you the way that you want it. It might be a good idea just to take some time to reflect on what potentially might be going in, especially if you find yourself in what I call a repetitive cycle. So maybe a cycle of abuse, a cycle of bad relationships, a cycle of, certain things just going on. And you're thinking, God, this is a pattern. Again, if that's something that you're experiencing, another thing that you might want to deal with in terms of dealing with some of the junk that we sometimes pick around on our journeys. And so basically what I'm trying to say today is, as you are putting things in place in terms of your home, I've seen people washing their car thoroughly. I've seen people do it, even exercising, and that's phenomenal. I salute you. We all need to be exercising, so it's not even an issue at all. But just remember that you are made of a spirit, soul, and a body, okay? All three of them kind of like hang together, okay? And you can't have one without the other. So it's no point having this super duper lovely body, and yet on the inside of you, it's kind of like almost like festering with untreated wounds, so wounds of the heart or whatever it is. You'll always find when we don't deal with some of these things, they just fester and they just fester. And basically what you're doing is you're putting a plaster on a wound that potentially needs surgery. Now imagine if you're just putting a plaster on a wound that actually needs maybe surgery, maybe it needs debriding, whatever it is that needs to be done, maybe it needs to be sewn because it's quite deep. What a number of us tend to do is just put a plaster on it and say, I'm okay. And then if you take it another level, like I used to do, you kind of like put no entry on your heart and say, love doesn't live here anymore, so don't even go there. So any opportunity where people are trying to come into your world, you kind of keep them out. Now, if that's, by the way, if that's somewhere you're something you're dealing with, by all means, feel free to message me. I've got some resources to support you on that journey. It's just not worth dealing with all that, and especially when it comes to things like unforgiveness, because there's a saying that says unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping that your enemy is the one who's going to suffer as a result of the poison, but actually you're the one drinking it, and it's going to have a negative impact on you. And so really it's about looking at some of the declutter. So here's what I suggest you do. And so this is Coach Grace coming out here now. So here's what I suggest you do. Just in your find somewhere, whether it be, and I was going to say, normally I'd say maybe go to the park, but we can't do that at the moment. But find a quiet place. And for me, sometimes what I tend to do is either go to bed early or wake up earlier and just kind of reflect on my attitudes, my behaviors, and my mindsets. What's going on there? Has anything at all crept in that potentially may harm me? Has anything potentially crept in that potentially may do me some, when I say harm, as in, unforgiveness, bitterness, negative emotions, all those kind of things will they ultimately harm us. And that's why I'm always, a proponent for us to identify what these things are and deal with them. So it's about making, maybe you might find journaling a good idea, getting a notepad and just really reflecting and being honest with yourself, because this is just a meeting with you, okay? Nobody else is there. It's just you, okay? Have a look and see what's actually going on there. And then perhaps make it, when you find whatever it is that you find, accept it. I'm not saying you are, a horrible person or anything like that, nothing like that. We're saying accepting the behavior pattern that you're identifying. Accept it and then make a decision that you want to do something about it. Now, I always use the unforgiveness because it's so prevalent in our society today. And when it comes to unforgiveness, I encourage people, your first step really is trying to get to the first step of the forgiveness ladder. Now, for you, it might be having a conversation with somebody. And in some cases, you can't have that conversation. But, actually, if that's something that you're going through, message me. Just send me a message and then I will send you some resources. But, it's really about getting the first step. Now, as you know, there is no forgiveness app. I wish there was one, okay? There is no forgiveness app. Nor is there a button on my forehead that I can just press and it would just make me better, delete all the issues, and I can just carry on my journey. There is nothing like that at all. So therefore, we need to take ownership of that and take action. Now, when it comes to things like this, I personally have a two-prong approach. Okay, in fact, most things in life, I have a two-prong approach. There's the things that God can do, okay, and I kind of like relegate some things to him, okay, because there's some things I just can't change. I can't change my past. I can't change certain things. And whilst he can't necessarily change the past, but he can heal me from my past. Okay, so there's some things I kind of present to God and I say, Lord, I need help dealing with this issue. Okay, so that's prong number one, okay, number approach. The other prong is this. There's a part that I have to play in that equation. I can't just say, well, it's nothing to do with me. I can't control it. So therefore, I'm just going to, no. There is a part that you have to play in that whole equation. So what do you then have to do? You have to make, first and foremost, you have to make a decision in your heart that you are going to deal with some of the emotional clutter that has accumulated as a result of life happening. You just have to make that decision. And for some people, in fact, if not all, your first step on that ladder, in fact, not just forgiveness, but the first step on the ladder to recovery is making a determination in your heart that actually, I'm not going to let this thing affect me the way it's been doing anymore. So basically you're saying, you've come this far, no more. I'm not accepting this. And when you start to just adopting that kind of approach, you start to see yourself changing. You notice a different mindset. Say, for example, it was somebody who really offended you. And it's like, in fact, I'm going to have to do a series. I'm going to have to do a talk on offense because I don't know why I keep talking about offense and unforgiveness, but I just sense perhaps this is something that, let me get some water. Excuse me. I just sense that perhaps this is something that somebody needs to deal with, and I am going to deal with this. I think we're going to have a whole session on unforgiveness and moving on from that. But so, as I said, in terms of your road to recovery, the first step is really wanting to make sure that you decide, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm going to be victorious on this matter, and I'm going to move forward, regardless of whatever it is that I'm facing or whatever it is I have faced. I am going to move forward. So that really should really be your first step of the ladder. The second thing to then think about is, okay, well, based on the situation itself. So I talk about, when life happens. For me, I've had losses like my younger sister 2 years ago. I've had losses of my dad, some years back, some challenges along the way, some, people just being mean, I always say this story, many years ago, many years ago, I was a bigger size lady. I was a plus size lady. And, one of the things, and maybe this is a message for somebody out there, but one of the things that used to grate me the most is when people say, oh, Grace, but it used to be Gladys. But oh, Gladys, you look well. I was like, oh God, I roll my eye. I think, oh God, here we go again. Basically, what they're trying to say is you've gained weight. And you know what? Just those few words, like you look well, people will never know the amount of damage that actually did to me. Because you know what? Remember I talked about earlier on, I found myself rehearsing and rehearsing that statement. So every time I saw that person, I was like, ugh! You know, I wanted to kind of like, I know I couldn't, but I wanted to really like just lay in on them and, you know, for saying what they said. And I'll never forget when I had some of my quiet moments, as I said earlier on, when I try and use it to catch up with myself. I then realized, you know, my quiet, reflective and prayer times, I then realized, well, actually, that there was something. I had an issue, you know, with a particular person, and I needed to deal with it because every time I saw them, even though they didn't say the same thing time and time again, every time I saw them, I was not thinking nice thoughts. Let's just put it that way. I was not thinking nice thoughts. And so, you know, for me, that was an indicator that there was an issue. Now, over to you. You might want to look at your own life and think about, well, what are the indicators out there? Because they are always indicators. Okay, so indicators. So again, becoming more self-aware in terms of taking that step on the ladder to recovery, taking action. So for me, I mean, there's two ways in that kind of scenario. I could have gone up to the person and say, you know what, every time you say that, this is the impact it has on me, and I really don't like that. But at that time, I hadn't found my voice. I didn't bother. I was just getting angrier and angrier with the person. So that's an option in terms of speaking to the person, or you can just decide to let them go. Because there is a saying, because one of the things I've learned over the years is the fact that people are at different stages of their development, different stages. In fact, in Quit Hiding, Start Living, I use the analogy of a manufacturing plant, and you know when they have conveyor belts. Okay, so some of us are at the beginning of that processing journey, and some of us are in the middle, some of us are going towards the end, but we're all on this conveyor belt. Now obviously the ones at the beginning haven't had as much processing as the ones in the middle, and then the ones in the middle likewise are the ones at the end. And so it kind of like gave me a bit more compassion when it came to dealing with people, to actually, you know what, I can't hold him or her to ransom, because you know they're all at different stages of their own development. But also there's a notion that says, you know, hurt people also hurt people. So again, I'm thinking, oh, okay, you know, they've said that statement. Could it be that they're hurting themselves? And for me, these are just two strategies that I actually adopted when it came to, you know, trying to release people from my heart, because I started to have compassion for them and think, well, actually, you know, perhaps that there's stuff going on in their world that either they're oblivious to, or, you know, that's happened to them. So kind of like let them go. And that's really one or two of the strategies that I've actually adopted to help me deal with people. But just, you know, stepping into their world for once, and for just, you know, for a few minutes, and just seeing what's going on in their world. That's not to say, by the way, I am not saying that we tolerate abusive behavior. I remember in the first session that I did, I called us the chief executives of our own lives. We call the shots. You put boundaries in place, and boundaries is a lovely thing that we put in place to basically let people know, you know, in terms of, you know, how this, basically, lack of a better word, how this relationship is going to work. So if you do X, Y, Z, there are certain consequences of X, Y, Z. And I think sometimes we don't enforce our boundaries enough, and that's some of the reasons why we sometimes get hurt. But I'll deal with another session on boundaries in another time. So as I was saying, it's really about reflecting on what's going inside and dealing with the challenges that you may face. Now, using the spiritual principles, I just wanted to share something with you. And I love something from the Bible. When I'm going through a challenging time, one of the things I always do is look and see through the Bible. Number one, who's been through the situation before? Okay, so who's had a challenge of their own in the Bible that I can relate to, identify with, and see how they dealt with it. Or, is there a principle or a strategy that I can actually adopt? Or is there just a message, an uplifting a message that can give me hope through that situation? And I just want to read something to you, and it's found in the book of Psalms 147, verses 3. And it says, he heals the brokenhearted and he bandages their wounds. That's in the New Living Translation. So Psalm 147, verses 3 says, he heals their broken hearts and bandages their wounds. And what does that tell me? Personally, that is so reassuring and reaffirming to me to know that regardless of the junk I accumulate as a result of life's challenging moments, it tells me that basically God's got my back. Okay, he's saying that he's aware that I'm going to get brokenhearted and I'm going to get wounds at some point or the other, but he's given me the assurance that he heals broken hearts and he bandages our wounds. And for me, that's so comforting to know that there's that assurance as well as that provision in terms of healing hearts and dealing with mindsets as well, and all the kind of junky stuff that we carry around with us. And so let me just finish that story I was sharing with you earlier on about the unforgiveness kind of thing that I was going through with this particular person. Now, when you've got somebody in your heart, you kind of like held them basically hostage in your heart, right? Again, you're the one who's struggling with the after effects, and what you'll probably find is they're skipping along on their merry way. In fact, some people don't actually know they've hurt you. Bless their cotton socks. Okay, so some people, it's not intentional, but I remember, with the scenario that I mentioned earlier on, there was a time where, I saw the person, it's like, I was gritting my teeth and like getting really angry and remembering. I mean, this is like years later, and it's like, woman, get over it kind of thing. And so until I decided I was going to take a step in terms of moving forward and dealing with some of these things. And I started that journey. And I remember I talked about the compassion. And I really thank God for my faith, because I delved into the Bible and, I experienced God's love in so many ways, in particular around understanding about his love for me and how I'm supposed to reciprocate to other people. Now, me loving somebody doesn't mean they have to become my best friend after situations happened or anything like that, but it's a state of the heart. Remember I said the heart earlier on? It's all about the state of the heart, and it's about you releasing them from your heart. And so here I went from, remember I talked about the steps of the ladder. I went from somebody who saw them like, really, really, really had an issue with that person. And to the point whereby, when you're sleeping and sometimes you can't sleep because it's just playing and playing and playing and playing. Went from that stage to all the way to being able to see the person and actually give them a hug and just completely release them from my heart. Was that an easy journey? No. Did it happen overnight? No. As I said, we don't have a forgiveness app, and I don't have a button on my forehead. I can't just erase everything. But what I can learn to do is practical strategies to help me move forward. So I'm hoping that session has been of some use to you. And the message is just simple. As you have the time, to, do things around the house, around for yourself, catch up with yourself, take some time just to check to see if there's any junk, emotional baggage, also known as, that you might have accumulated along the journey. And just use this lockdown time to decide, actually, I'm going to identify what the problem is, and I'm going to accept what I find, and I'm also going to take action. Now, for some people, it's just, speaking to somebody. You might need to speak to somebody professionally. You might need to get further support, help, resources. There's lots of resources out there. So none of us really need to be stuck in the way that, we might find ourselves. And as I said, this is a fantastic tool that you can actually use. And with most of my books, there are always coaching exercises, journaling moments, and things like that you can actually use to help you understand. So that one, oopsie daisy, Quit Hiding, Start Living is really helping women who've experienced hurts in particular, especially in terms of relationships. And the other one, sorry, which fell, overcoming emotional baggage. For me, this really should be the manual that people use in terms of uncovering just and becoming more aware about some of our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. And so, if you imagine having an onion, okay, so what we're doing is we're trying to peel layers of that onion so that you can become freer and experience the abundant life that I believe we were all called to live. So I'm hoping that that's been of use to you. By all means, send me messages, share your comments. I normally have resources to share with people. Feel free to reach out through Messenger and just let me know if I could be of any support. I have lots of books, including my own and other people's books. I can recommend resources, training programs. We're about to launch some training programs around dealing with challenging life situations, overcoming discouragement, overcoming grief and loss. Why am I writing about that? Because I know so much about it. Okay, and then there's going to be some other courses as well. And we've got some resources around overcoming emotional baggage as well. So if that's something that you need support with, get in touch. But remember, I just want to leave you with a couple of things. Number one, become more aware of so the junk that you might have accumulated. And if you've got no junk, that's cool, but just keep checking in every so often. Number two, accept whatever it is that you find. Number three, take action. And taking action doesn't mean doing nothing. You need to take some form of action. And then number three, monitor. Sorry, I do beg your pardon. Number four, monitor your state. And I just hope and pray that as you are going through this particular period, that you will have the time, the strength, the courage, the clarity of mind and the soundness of mind to help you identify some of the things that might have been the blockages or hindrances in the past so that you can move forward in the future. So by the time this lockdown is over, that we have a phenomenal version of you going out there to do phenomenal things. And that's my hope and prayer for you. So until the next one, you take care of yourself. God bless you. I'll share some links with you, but by all means, feel free to reach out to me and then let's see how we can get you supported. So take care. God bless you and stay uplifted. Take care. Bye.